A Light Within Darkness, Chapter 21, Fan Fiction by Azazyel. Just as I said, the union of my already well-established young lively energies collided with the growing yin energies, and the simple quantity of the small star within me versus the tiny moon forming within her made it so I had no choice but to focus on not burning out the tiny moon within her as my star-attributed chi that was controlling her own lunar-attributed growing chi. Although Elesmere didn't have an actual cultivation art, the high-quality lunar forces within her body was forming its own dantian within the Eldar, similar to an actual cultivation art like my heavenly demon swallowing art, but to be blunt, without her own cultivation art she would have a ludicrously less amount of chi than me, not to mention I still had that seal upon her soul tying her to me that would make sure she didn't get any disloyal ideas. With the inevitable collisions of our energies, the resulting pure creation energies were spread throughout Elesmere's body, making her begin twitching at the conceptual energies that could quite literally give birth to life in something as simple as a rock should the energies be pushed into it. "Concentrate, Elesmere, you are almost done," I spoke as I began pulling the saturated yin energies within her body into her new dantian, and finally a small silver orb was formed out of the yin energies, and then the orb showed its own weak gravitational pull as it pulled all the leftover energies from the moon core chunks we bought to strengthen itself, growing at a far greater pace on its own under Elesmere's clumsy control. I sighed as I pulled my consciousness out of Elesmere's body, and still with the Eldar basically in my lap I began to refine the overabundant yin chi that leaked from her body into mine from how I used my own chi to direct her own, and just the close proximity we were in was allowing her to leak a bit of the yin chi into the surroundings with her lack of control and allow me to absorb it before it could disperse. Damned temptations. Elesmere shuddered as she held her sides, shivering from the yin chi changing her body to suit it, and naturally, she would seek my young rich body that was right behind her, but doing so would only trigger a sort of dual cultivation of with our merging energies, and even as she leaned against my chest, I could see her Eldari ears turn red. The amount of chi I was able to gather and create from our partial merging in the grand scheme of things was much lesser than what I could accomplish within my kiln by opening a small tear into the warp and absorbing the random chaos spawn that came through, but these energies that came from our union however did a far greater job at enhancing my physique than just simple mediation and using my cultivation art to fuel my growing star within myself. You were right about the lust I would feel during this. Elesmere finally spoke as she fully relaxed against me with her lunar core's foundation solidified. She just laid into me, basically just baking in a cocktail of enhanced emotions present within Eldar, magnified by the aphrodisiac-worthy feeling of my pure yang energies swirling around her own body, caressing her senses like a warm wind wrapping around her body. Although for me it was far less intense than she was feeling her Eldar due to her heritage, the cool feeling of her yin chi felt literally like cool fingernails caressing my body in a teasing manner was certainly distracting. Finally, Elesmere leaned forward awkwardly on the thickly padded mat she had as a meditation cushion and floor for her room, and then turned around, so she was facing me. "How long will these feelings of lust pervade me, Jake?" Elesmere asked, and I could tell the feelings were definitely getting the better of her as she was biting her lips, and her every motion would pull her soft, tight, satin-like clothes that clung to her sensitive body parts would make her shiver with almost every breath she took, tweaking her breasts. Reviewing my cultivation knowledge that also covered bits of medicine and such for alchemy, I answered. "Well, you can wean yourself slowly off my young energies for the next month or so with its feeling escalating as you go through something similar to withdrawal, or we can dual cultivate in a much more intimate sense, and the union of our energies will create a much higher tier of energy that will reinforce our elemental cores and won't drive us to such lusts when we merely share the same room." She gave me a look and, before rolling her eyes, shrugged. "Very well, there's not much of a choice, and we did agree to share a bed once we got a decent bed. Plus, being able to make love without the feeling of she who thirsts watching to snag my soul will be a religious experience, to say lightly," she said before she attempted to get onto her bed and failed as her legs flailed at the feeling of her thong riding up between her womanhood. "The stain in this meditation mat is going to be a trial to remove." She cursed, and I could see her just mentally saying fuck it as she literally just relaxed into the mat beneath her, lying on her back as she spread her legs for me, who was already approaching her. I didn't question if she was ready for my entry, as to put it bluntly, she was a leaky faucet down there with actual drops of her lady fluids cascading in the 10 or so seconds it took me to pull off my pants and pull off her skirt and panties. She cried out loudly with her handful-sized breasts rising to meet my face as the feeling of my sweltering young energy enthused manhood entered her almost frigid yin-filled cavern, sent her into a frenzy as the mind-boggling reaction of truly mystical sex drove her much more sensitive Eldar mind firmly into the Ahigo zone as her little elf mind almost shattered with her eyes rolling up. When I finally bottomed out into Elesmere due to her fluttering womanhood attempted to strangle my dick as it tried to enter her, she seemed to have a minor seizure at the feeling of my almost molten precum coating her frigid depths, and the contrasting temperatures sent her fully into an orgasm and buried her chest into my face as she held onto my head and shoulders as she sounded close to sobbing at the euphoric pure pleasure she was feeling, untainted by the agony promised by feeling any pleasure coming from Slaanesh, who has haunted her people for so long. Just use me. I can't participate. She stuttered after she held me so firmly that I couldn't even move or hump into her to create the warmth of friction her sodden depths demanded of me. I gently pulled her off me, and I took her hands within my own as I folded Elesmere's flexible legs behind my shoulder and as I pushed her hands with my own above her head. I pushed down into her in a mating press position, making her cry out again as I took all agency from her and began to rhythmically slam my length into her womanhood. With her all but folded over and her arms braced over her head, all she could do was cry out for more, kiss my neck, and leave hickeys upon my neck that felt like someone had branded me with an iron dipped in liquid nitrogen as she used her yin chi unconsciously. Finally I reached my own peak as Elesmere began to leak her yin chi, which aggravated my own yang chi into action, and I felt a solid chunk of my yang chi be expelled via my manhood with my seed as it shot into the depths of Elesmere, and likewise the infusion of my yang chi into her body was like pouring more liquids into an already fueled cup, so her body, the metaphorical cup, overflowed with her overflowing yin chi being absorbed into my own dantian. I let her legs and arms go and we just naturally curled around one another, with me acting as the big spoon as my arms wrapped around her breasts and my other arm dragged her hips closer to me while she neatly intertwined our legs together and held my arms that wrapped around her possessively, so even if I were trying to let go of her it would be for naught. I feel your warmth so closely. It's like when I was standing in front of one of the shards of Kala Mencha Kine on my craft world or one of the artifacts of Lord Asurian. She spoke, pushing herself to almost meld her body against myself as she hummed in delight at the feelings our dual cultivation brought her. For an Eldar to speak so empathically of our union and liken it to the feeling of being close to the gods of the Eldar people, definitely made me feel proud as a man.